Yeah, that makes sense.
Stop it. For the love of God! Please! Damn! Where are they?
So Shiv has been pretty much nerfed every single patch.
Bad for me, but probably a net positive for society.
Finally, we're at a point where Valve thinks they don't need to nerf him again. But if you look at the external sources, currently he's sitting at the bottom of the win rate chart. His pick rate has also been tanked by more than 30%. Most of the high MMR players don't even consider Shiv when it comes to ranked. But is he really that bad now? Well, today, boys and girls, we're gonna be taking a look at a build that I think is the answer to every single match that you play Shiv. And we're gonna make Shiv great again. So let's get it started. If I go to the shop right now and browse builds, if we go to the public page, I would say more than 90% of these builds are outdated, and I've looked at almost all the top ones and they're really bad. So what's the solution? Well, there is two mindsets that you currently should have when it comes to building Shiv: item mindset and ability mindset, which they are different but linked together at the same time. Firstly, I want to address the item mindset. The popular opinion about Shiv item builds is that he has two major builds, gun and knife build, which is the spirit version of the Shiv. Well, in my opinion, both of these builds suck. The gun version of the Shiv is good for early game, but if for whatever reason you can't finish the game in less than 20 minutes, you start turning into hot garbage. The spirit build, on the other hand, works better for late game, but the spirit build we have for the Shiv right now in the popular builds, they're very specific and they won't work in all situations. With my version of the Shiv build though, I've combined both the gun builds and the spirit build so that we have a good early game, but then we also scale better into the late game. So the very first thing that we want to do is to explain all of the items that I have right here. After I've explained all the items to you guys, I will talk about the ability points, which is a huge deal, and I think that this is probably the most important part about this video, which I probably will put a timestamp for. But I also want to give you guys the mindset behind every single one of these items, and this is because the game changes drastically and I want you guys to have your own mindset when it comes to my build and know when you can actually go ahead and change it. So I'm going to start it off by the headshot booster. Without the headshot booster, we shoot the enemy from this distance. You can see that we're doing like what, 29 damage, right? And now I add a headshot booster on top of that and we're all of a sudden doing 70 damage with our shotgun as a poke damage. It's a really great item that you need to get as soon as you start to feel survivable in the lane. Okay, so as you guys can see, I'm now currently damaged and I'm going to do this from this distance, and there's no way that I'm just going to be able to headshot that guy from this distance. But if I go ahead and press this, as you guys can see right here, we just heal for 40, which is just insane. I don't even have the fucking target in the like, there's no way I'm headshotting that guy right now. But like, as you can see, just by having his head in the middle of my crosshair, I'm just healing for 40 per shot, which makes restorative shot busted on Shiv. Just a quick note, guys, since the video was recorded before the patch, I now take melee lifesteal instead of enduring the spirit always, but you can still take enduring the spirit in games where you want this slowing hex more than suppressor. In the other games, do not buy it because you are hungry for green slots, and if you buy it, you have to sell it before it gives you value. The rest of the footage is gonna have enduring the spirit instead of melee lifesteal, so just a heads up for that. The sprint puts is insane value on Shiv since they nerfed his rage and it now starts going back way faster, so you need this item to just get that one shot in between the camps and in between the fights, so your rage doesn't diminish, and it also helps you gank more, and it later on builds into enduring speed, which, by the way, there's so many slows in the game right now that if you don't buy enduring speed, you're just shooting yourself in the foot. One thing that you might notice with the tier 1 items is that I do not build spirits items. Probably the two items that would help him the most amount is a Spirit Strike and the Mystic Burst. And Mystic Burst, it can actually be good. I've actually tried to put on Mystic Burst, but the problem with Mystic Burst is that if you put Mystic Burst on, then you can't get the combination of Suppressor, Mystic Vulnerability, Improved Cooldown, and Torment Pulse if you fall behind. And if you don't have any Phylexit slots, you just run out of Phylexit slots very quickly. There's 3 options that I have over here, which is the Healing Rite, Extra Regen, and Monster Rounds. The Monster Rounds is a really good item. The only reason why I haven't put it on the mandatory items is because if you go with the Monster Rounds and if you go with these 2 options, then you can get both of these items, which is Kinetic Dash and Mystic Shot. And Kinetic Dash and Mystic Shot are insanely good for your DPS. Kinetic Dash also makes your mobility insane. There's also the matter of Kinetic Dash giving you a mobility trick that you can do. So if I go ahead and use Kinetic Dash right here, you guys can see that I can use my right click to just slide around. And not only does this make our hitbox is smaller for the enemy to hit and try to headshot us, but it also allows us to just very quickly move around the map, especially early on where we might not have much movement speed at all. I've tested this and it seems to be way faster than you just trying to run around the place. Also, if someone hits you with a slowing hex and you use this trick, you will not be slowed. The other item is Mystic Shot. If I go ahead and get a headshot on this guy, you can see that we just did 200 damage, and early on that 200 damage is insane, especially against certain carries. That pretty much takes 20% of their health. Having these 2 items is necessary. That's why we don't take Monster Rounds, but Monster Rounds is good if you're going up against a McGinnis or you want to dive the enemy under the tower. Just note that if you want to go with the Monster Rounds route, you have to sell Restorative Shot very early on. The other 2 items you only ever take if you are struggling in lane or if you absolutely need them. Healing Rite is if you get into a situation where you are extremely hurt but you don't want to back, and also Extra Regen if the lane is just too poke heavy, so Restorative Shot just doesn't provide an answer. Healbane is insane, not just because we're in a healing meta and it provides minus 45% healing reduction, but also because the 350 heals on kills makes you unkillable with the combination of Bloodletting in team fights. Spirit Lifesteal is the same idea. Combined with Bloodletting, it will make you not actually afraid to die when farming jungle camps after getting owned in a fight. You can literally have like 100 HP and just farm the tier 3 camps and not die. And you can also come in clutch before you can afford leech in a team fight. I've actually tried Restorative Locket as well, but Restorative Locket is not as good as a Spirit Lifesteal. And the improved cooldown just shaves 2 seconds, I believe, off of your dash and puts it at 10 seconds. Later on, you can upgrade this to superior cooldown, which shaves us another 2 seconds. Considering your dash's last upgrade reduces its cooldown when you dash through enemies by 2 seconds, up to a total of 6 seconds. With Subsidy, you can basically reduce it all the way down to only a 2-second cooldown dash, which is just nuts. Mystic Vulnerability is good because you can upgrade it into Escalating Exposure, which is the same as EE, by the way, since I've used that term in the build sometimes. And with Torment Pulse and your knives, you'll be able to just build ES stacks so quickly on your enemies and make your dash hit like a truck. So your knives turn from a DPS kind of thing to just a tool that you can use to build ES stacks on anybody, even an Abrams, and just basically one-shot them with your dash and your ult. If you're not going for the Escalating Exposure, you might be able to skip Mystic Vulnerability, but as of the moment I don't do that, because even with the Torment Pulse you can just easily proc this, and Torment Pulse is something that we go almost every single game. The Suppressor is also the same idea as Mystic Vulnerability. The reason why Suppressor is so good is because every single thing that you do, from Mystic Shot to Torment Pulse to your dash to your daggers, all of them apply a spirit damage consistently to the enemy, which means that with the Suppressor, a lot of the enemies that are going to have really high fire rates are going to be suppressed and they cannot one-shot you. This includes Wraith as well. You're pretty much going to be able to 1v1 anybody on the map. Moving on to the tier 3 items, these are the situational items. I will talk about these later as we go. Just know that Spirit Armor is something that you're going to probably be taking every single game, and instead of improved bullet armor and bullet armor, I usually go for Return Fire and Metal Skin, and Debuff Reducer is just for the comps that are insanely heavy in terms of a stun, or maybe if you are against Infernus and Pocket, and the debuffs from those heroes heroes are hurting you a lot, debuff reducer can be a really good option as well. The first option that we have for the tier 3s is Torment Pulse, and you need to rush Torment Pulse as soon as you possibly can. So sometimes I go with Mystic Shot and Kinetic Dash, and then I just straight up go into Torment Pulse. And the reason why Torment Pulse is so good is because it insanely increases the rate at which you can farm, and also it works with the superior cooldown. So if you have superior cooldown, the Torment Pulse is actually going to be 1.1 second per the time that it takes for it to tick, and that's going to be insanely good because it works very well with the escalating exposure, which just can be procced every 0.7 seconds. If you use your knives and then you just have Torment Pulse on the enemy, you're just going to be getting your EES stacks just super fucking quickly. With Improved Burst, you can add 80 damage to your dash per 1k HP that the enemy has, and since most characters go above like 2k HP, you basically add 200 raw damage to your dash. But the reason why it's busted is because the cooldown is per person, not per usage. So that means that if you dash through 3 enemies, you basically add 600 damage to your total damage that you're doing to the enemy team. The other 3 items that I've put in the tier 3 though, they are a little bit tricky because I don't always take them. Mystic Slow is really good, again the same reason as Suppressor. Everything that you do does a spirit damage, and everything that you do is going to reduce their movement speed by 25%, allowing you to just catch up and just chase the enemies way easier. Rapid Recharge is really good for the knife harassment. Even though we're not particularly aiming for a knife build, it's really good because if you build escalating exposure and you go for your knives, and as you can see, I'm just putting a couple of knives on them, maybe like 2 to 3 knives on the enemy, and you can see the amount of damage that is just building up. It builds up to 1,000 damage with just 3 knives, which is just insanely good to chase down your enemy and absolutely destroy them. The other item is Headhunter, although I'm not really sure about the Headhunter. I don't think you need it for every single game, but it's a good upgrade for the headshot booster if you're feeling rich. The last item in this build is going to be Leech. Leech is really good because it boosts the amount of healing that you can do on Shiv, and the more you heal on Shiv, the more bloodletting is just going to be broken. So if you have Leech and let's just say you're hurt, and I go ahead and dash in between these 2 enemies, and you can see I just went to full HP. The last 4 items that I put here are super situational, unstoppable if the enemy team has a lot of CCs like Dynamo, like Mo, and you're just getting locked down every single fight and you can't do anything. Colossus makes you pretty much unkillable on Shiv. And if they decide to like really go on you, they have to use everything on you, and then your team can just killing them up. Frenzy is something that I'm not really sure about, but it can be really good because it provides 45% bullet resistance, and you can just heal with Leech if you're that tanky at that point of the time. Soul Rebirth is... Okay, so now that we have an understanding of the way that certain items work, I kind of want to give you a rundown of the way that you're going to be building Shiv depending on the ability points that you go for. So you always, no matter what, you're going to want to take these 4 items. If you have to go for these items, go for it. Take at least 2 of them, but if not, you straight up go for Kinetic Dash and Mystic Shot to boost your weapon damage by significant amount and increase your kill potential. Then you want to go ahead and grab Torment Pulse if you are rich. If you're not rich and the game is just not going in your favor, you just want to go ahead and slap on everything that you see on these tier 2 and then get Torment Pulse afterwards. One of the probably the insane things about Torment Pulse is that people can heal out of the execute range. So if for example this guy is on execute right now, if I press my execute and by the time that I actually arrive at the guy to execute him, if he heals a little bit, maybe he gets rescue beamed or something, he can actually not get executed and we just damage him for 200. But with Torment Pulse, he can be guaranteed to just fall below the threshold and doesn't just regen or get life stealed out of the threshold. So Torment Pulse is always necessary, but this is the point where it completely depends on the path that you take in terms of your abilities, which one of these items you go for. One of the things that is extremely important with Shiv, with the new Shiv, is that you put 2 points in your dash early on, and pretty much every single one of the builds, no matter what you're going for, you want to do this. This is extremely more valuable than your knife. If you're in dual lanes, I don't even have to argue why, it's just better. But even if you're in solo lanes, and some people, specifically Defi, shout out to Defi by the way, he argues that putting more points in knife and hitting people with like more than one knife guarantees their death, and that's true, but that is completely conditional, and your dash is just unconditional burst damage that compared to your knife damage, it just destroys people's HP in matter of less than 1 second. So after putting 2 points into your dash, the very next thing that you want to do is to make sure that your ult or your rage actually does a decent amount of damage. And for that, you need to put 2 points into your ult. That is something that you can see that I've done with my build as well. I put 2 points into ult, and then you want to put 1 point in bloodletting. And the reason behind this is obviously because the 8% incoming damage will be deferred and makes you really tanky, makes you capable of doing so much, and at this point you're just capable of doing a lot as Shiv. Here is where it matters the most to put your points in the abilities that actually make a difference. Each of these paths are honestly viable, and depending on the paths that you take, you want to change the item build that you're going for. The first path that you can take at this point is when you put 3 points into your knife by a rapid recharge and escalating exposure, and the situation which this build is going to be good is when you're ahead but your team is struggling to make something happen. This way you can just keep stacking the knives onto an enemy from afar without engaging them and doing almost all of their HP depending on the character that you're stacking your knives on, basically rendering them useless and make something happen with your team. So I didn't really explain these situational items a lot, but one thing that you can do, for example, as Shiv, is you put at this point, you put 1 point into your ult, and then you just take both of these items, you know, to make yourself really tanky. So when your team is behind and you can't really damage the enemy by a lot, going this route allows you to just survive in the fight long enough for the enemies to fall below the threshold, and then you can just ult and execute them and then move on to the next person. The other way is obviously for going with your dash. This is a more DPS heavy way. So let's just say your team is not efficient at farming jungles. They need someone to do that just for keeping up with the enemy farm, or maybe the enemy is ganking a lot and not farming their jungle. So you can go this route and you can basically clear faster than even 7. And your dash based cooldown will basically come up before the next camp, or even the same camp if you're hitting all the minions in the camp. Believe me when I say this way of farming the jungle is just so damn good. It's amazing. So this is, in my opinion, the most important point about Shiv right now is identifying in every single game whether or not you should go for the dash build, the ult build, or the knife build. Each of these builds are completely viable in their own, and I encourage you guys to try each and every single one, see their strengths, see their weaknesses, see their power spikes in the game. And if you guys are too lazy for that, you guys can go ahead and subscribe to the channel. I'm gonna be posting different videos about the Shiv, because Shiv is one of the main characters that I play, and I'm going to be showcasing every single aspect and every single build for the Shiv, every single route that you can take. But for now, know that in this build you have everything that you need in order to make Shiv a viable character. You just don't have to look into these other pages in order to find the perfect item to just counter your enemy, other than the items that are in the spirit page, which are like curse, decay, slowing hicks. These are completely situational items. You don't need to get them, you don't have to get them, but sometimes for your team, if your team is not getting these items, because Shiv shouldn't be buying these items, I'm just gonna go ahead and say it, but if your team is being really greedy and they're not getting, for example, a knockdown against a Ivy and a Vindicta, then you might have to get knocked down. But it's not part of our main build. It's part of these spirit items are just completely situational that you might need to get them. And these are all the active items that you see in the spirit. So we have Decay, a Slowing Hex, Withering Whip, Silence Glyph, Knockdown, and Curse. These are the items that I didn't put in the build because they don't need to be in the build. They're not part of our build, but we might have to get them depending on the matchups that we have. And that's about it, guys. This video is gonna take a long time for me to edit, so if you guys enjoyed it, it would mean a lot to me. If you liked the video, comment your feedback and maybe share it with the people you know. I'm currently working on another game as well, and I just made this channel because I love the game, and if the support is good, I'm just gonna make more videos for you guys. But yeah, that's about it for now, and I hope you all enjoyed the video, and I see you all next time.